3:27. Let's start wrapping up the markets. And Navneet, let's start off with you first. Suffice to say that all the key indices are showing pain, and the contributors to the indices will not be any different either.
That's right, Neeraj. It's not a great closing to this week because the kind of cuts that we're seeing across the board are a little bit scary. Just a data point here, Nifty has seen its biggest percentage fall since November 21st, 2016. And mind you, that was the demonetization month after which the markets recovered. So these are some deeper cuts in the last 6 to 7 months. Nifty finally would be closing with cuts of almost 165 points. Sensex also down about 460 points with about 1.5% cut thereabout. Financials clearly not supporting this market. Nifty Bank has been weak in the past few trading sessions. Today also it's ending the day with the negative note. The broader markets actually saw some deeper cuts. So Nifty mid cap down closer to 3%, small cap, and the Nifty small cap 100 index also closing with cuts of almost over 3%. The market breadth was also not so good, clearly in favor of the declines. But let's also look at a couple of gainers and losers with regard to Sensex today. There you go. Well, hardly two gainers there. That's Wipro and Coal India, but bunch of losers, and the list has been dominated by your metal counters. So Tata Steel ending the day with cuts of almost 5%. You've got the heavyweights like L&T, Reliance Industries all closing in the red. ICICI Bank, another heavyweight on the index, has seen major cuts coming about. In fact, ICICI Bank was weak yesterday as well. From the banking space, State Bank of India, Lupin, Adani Ports, Sun Pharma, Axis, you name it, and all these counters have ended the day in the red, Neeraj.
I'm not surprised. Volatility has also had a bit of a leg up in today's session as well, Navneet. So let's bring up some of the key movers and shakers in the session today. So India VIX clearly one of the key movers in the session today. Remember, volatility edged up in trade yesterday as well, only to fall down post the FinMin clarifications. In today's session, not quite. So a bit of a leg up there to the volatility. What about some of the individual movers in trade? And each of these will come up on your screen. I think we've seen losers from the media pack. We've seen losers from the real estate pack. So India Bulls Real Estate down about 9.5%. Not the best of days for this one. Bring up Ipca Labs, again 10% off. And remember, this is from a strong basket because Pharma had a fabulous day of trade yesterday. But in today's session, not quite. Almost all of these stocks have gone down in the session today. Bring up a couple of clusters as well. Nalco moving down about 7.5%. So not the best of days for this one. Similarly, some of the other commodity names, JSPL, I think had a terrible day in trade as well. 7.5% down. And the volumes on this one were fairly high compared to the 10-day average as well. What about some other losers? Reliance Capital down about 8.5%. Reliance Home Finance is the other one. It listed today, but doing okay. You would look at it at 2% gain and think that it's doing great. But remember, the expected listing price was much higher than what it listed at. So eventually, a bit of a disappointment on this one as well. There are maybe a couple of stocks which are bucking the trend. NDTV may be a new suitor. You never know which way the winds will blow, but for now the market seems to be liking it. Actually, not from now. For the last few days, the market seems to be liking it, and that stock is up, as are some of the other media names. The likes of Eros and TV Today are bucking the trend.
Well, if you look at the Nifty chart today, Neeraj, there's something interesting. You look at the 10,000 mark. It's not only numerically an important point, but also technically there were important supports around this level. So initially, market was trying to hold the 10,000 level, but when we finally gave in, there was further selling pressure below 10,000 level, and then we also saw volume building up at mid cap and small cap stocks, and a number of high beta counters came down crashing with good volumes. You look at the heat map, and this will actually tell you something. Out of these 50 stocks, only 3 stocks trading in green: HCL, Wipro, and Bharat Finance, and just one more. So this is clearly 47 stocks in red. And among losers, you have metal, Vedanta and Tata Steel. You have bank like Yes Bank. So this story really is across the board. There is selling pressure. Maybe there are a few sectors that saw pressure with good volume like metal and bank, and we'll look at them closely. But I think the first up we should look at the banking sector, because this is the sector that came under pressure. And you look at these contributors and you'll realize that ICICI Bank was actually responsible for a 15 points cut, and HDFC for another 10 points cut in Nifty today. So these two heavyweights together contributed 25 points on the downside to Nifty in today's trade. And look at Nifty Bank, there's a one-way trade. not even one move up you could look at. Every bounce was sold off. And if you look at the components and the contributors, Yes Bank, what is interesting with Yes Bank today is the volume. The total volume and the total turnover at this counter is much higher than the heavyweights like HDFC and HDFC Bank. Of course, ICICI Bank has witnessed higher volume, so that is yet another I think prominent short today on this stock that really saw a lot of selling pressure emerging. We should look at advanced decline because that is also telling an interesting story, and advanced decline ratios, especially if you look at these stocks which were quoting with good volumes in second half of the day or in the last hour of the trade, we saw selling pressure intensifying further, and we closed the day probably with the worst stat so far as the advanced decline ratio is concerned, Neeraj.
Thanks a lot for that, Pradeep. So let's get in closing thoughts from all our experts. And by the way, we have a comment, actually multiple comments, but one of the comments is from Girish Kumar on Facebook, and he's saying, great show, thanks for helping us make some money. Well, I guess some calls given by Nuresh probably work. Tell you what, Girish, if you stay on, and in the next session of this post this show, we'll probably get in some more ideas from Nuresh Mirani as well. But first, final thoughts from our fundamental experts. Sudeep, before we let you go, what's the quantum of downside that one should expect, if at all?
Well, I honestly don't think we will have a downward move more than 5%. So I think if we get 5%, that will be, I think, the end of it. I don't think it's going to go anywhere below that. I strongly believe that another 2-3 percentage points buying will start coming in. There is, believe me, there is enough and more liquidity waiting to get deployed.
So would you concur with this forward message I've got? Don't spend money on Amazon and Flipkart sales. Save money for the Lal Street sale.
Well, 100%. I completely agree. I mean, I'm an equity guy, hardcore equity guy. All of us are. So why waste money on Amazon and Flipkart sale? Buy equity when there is a sale, the Navratri sale going on.
Okay. What about you, Anand? You probably a bit more bearish, but what would your final thoughts be?
As I said, any valuation parameter I use tells me that the market is significantly overpriced. And by significantly, I mean it is 2 standard deviations away from the normal, which means that it is 99.5% of the time it will fall from here. If there is a correction, and like I said, I'm not convinced that this is the start of a correction, then you should expect to see at least a 12 to 15% fall on the headline.
Wow, okay. So there is a 5% fall view, there is a 12 to 15% fall view as well. You can pick and choose what you believe. But for now, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.